Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 FM. I'm Paul Kretschmer. School is in the sights of many parents as we look ahead to schooling in the future, the immediate future, during the COVID-19 crisis. On the line today is Carew Papritz, who's thought a lot about getting their families, their households ready for school in the uncertain circumstances of the moment.
Yeah, Paul, thanks for having me on your show. My name is Carew Papritz. I'm an author. I have written a book called The Legacy Letters, which is a inspirational fiction book. It's a series of letters this father has left behind to his kids to talk to them about spirituality and the things that they need to do in life, and so part of what I like to talk about is our legacy and in this particular time period. And one of the things that I started thinking about, I have a 13-year-old son who's going to school, a middle school, and I've been thinking about how to send him back to school, because all of us parents right now are really concerned about how to do that in a safe way. We all agree that we really want to send our kids back to school. No ifs, ands, or buts. But the bottom line is how to do it in the safest way possible. And so as a part-time deal, I also do some marketing for some healthcare places. One of them is a dental office, and so I have become somewhat of a quasi-expert in sterilization and contamination protocols, and I ended up helping out our local schools try to find their way through this, the reopening of schools. What I found to my shock was that when I asked them, because they didn't really know what to do or really how to open successfully and be that clean, was were they planning to do any testing, as in testing for the virus? And all of them said to a person, no, that wasn't even on our radar at all. And I was sort of dumbfounded by that. And it got me to thinking, why not? And I said, why can't we as parents ask for or even demand that all our children, especially at the start of school, have testing? I mean, especially that we have a clean slate to begin with this school year. And if we're sending our kids back, it seems to me that would be one of the most important items. So I ended up writing about it and talking about it, and that's where we're at today.
Yeah, what you just said a moment ago just raised for me a whole list of related questions, including, for instance, why would a school system even contemplate going back into classes if they don't have protocol to cover all the possible situations? For instance, if a child is in school and they're living at home with the parents or whoever the custodial parent may be, in some cases, aren't there protocols that determine how much the family moves around, how much the child moves around? Are there ways to limit their exposure to other people, adults, children, whatever the case may be, to minimize the possibility that they'll start school in the fall okay or clean, but at some point pick up the virus and want to be able to figure out, the parents in the school, for instance, figure out how they got infected, and contact tracing is one of the things that people are doing. So you are someone that sounds like thinks in large and yet at the same time micro terms to determine how the micro level looks like within the larger picture, that other people also have their micro situations, and it all comes together in a big way.
Paul, I think that's a great way of putting it. The micro and the macro, the big and the small here, and that's what left me really thinking about this, because here, I was into electrostatic cleaners and the fogging and the air filtration systems, which again, a lot of these like dental offices and healthcare areas that these schools wouldn't even know about. But the bigger picture, I can't get any more fundamental than to say, why would you start school not knowing who was infected and who wasn't? That's about as basic as you can get. And then, of course, to keep asking for more and more testing, and people say, well, how's that even impossible? It's impossible at this moment. And my thing is that we as parents, we're the parents of 76 million students in this country. We have a lot of power. And especially when it comes to, we have this parental power that we will do anything to ensure our kids' safety. So I don't see why we can't speak out in every way, shape possible, whether it be to the local school boards, to your representatives, to your senator, governors all the way to the top and just say, gosh, this is absolutely what we need. I cannot see doing this in any other way, especially with the start of school. I think that was the biggest part that shocked me. And Paul, the other interesting thing, too, when I asked, okay, so what if you get a positive case? And I remember a couple of meetings where there were just crickets. No one was saying anything. And I was stunned. And they said, well, we haven't figured that out yet. One guy told me, one school administrator said, well, we're thinking of treating it as if it were a lice infection. And I said, come again, lice infection? You mean as in contacting just the parents in that classroom? He says, yeah, that's what we're planning to do. That's the best we have to date.
And then tell them to run down to the store and get a box of Riddicks to treat it with.
Yes. Isn't that amazing?
I'm shaking my head, and it's been years since I had a child in school, but as a parent, nonetheless, I can still relate to what you're talking about with no problem at all.
Yeah, it was stunning. That's as far as they had gotten, and I mean, these are smart people. They've been trying to figure out how to reopen, and I just think but I was amazed at the things that they weren't asking. I think they were the 10,000-pound elephants in the room that no one wanted to really well, what happens if we do get it? Gosh. And then, of course, all we're dealing with is basket full of impossibilities. What if the teachers don't want to come back? Okay, I have a number of teachers in my family and friends, and they said, if we don't feel safe, we're not going to come back. And guess what? Well, people say, well, you got substitutes. And I go, are you kidding? Subs want to go back? And into that situation, getting paid much less than a teacher.
Yeah, if a first line teacher doesn't want to go back, then what's the odds that a substitute with perhaps potentially less training and, as you mentioned, a lower scale? Where's the incentive to put yourself in the? That's like asking someone to walk in the front to be the point man in a military formation, so that they can be the first one that gets plinked when a bullet or something flies
exactly
through the air, out of the bush.
Yeah, right. That's exactly it. So, I mean, that's just one example of the thing. Or else, I mean, take this. Another teacher friend of mine said, "Well, look, all these older teachers, your senior teachers, which are 50 and older, they've been around. They've really got the teaching down, and they're saying, I don't know if I want to come back. I'm just going to take early retirement." All of a sudden, you have this quote-unquote brain drain of teachers saying, I'm not going back. I'm just going to retire. You cannot replace those teachers. They're just impossible. Yeah.
I understand that firsthand because I have a brother who's 2 years younger than I am. I'll be 65 in a couple weeks. He's 2 years younger than I am. He was a teacher for over 30 years in Davenport, Iowa, and 2.5 years ago, he put in for retirement, and then a year to a year and a half ago, his wife, who is also a teacher, put in for her retirement. And so right about now, I haven't spoken to them in the last several weeks, but I would fathom the guess that right now they are both relieved not to be in that situation. Yeah. And it isn't anything like this spring someone decided to retire early or retire exactly on schedule and not come back potentially in the fall. These are a couple of people who are going to be out of the system anyway, but I have no idea whether their school system in Davenport, Iowa, ever thought about asking them to come back on even a part-time basis to fill the gaps that might be existing right now, for all I know. Yeah,
and to ask people of that age to start coming back, and people are definitely spooked. And and the other thing too is I tell people there's nothing political in this. This is about protecting our children because, again, I want my son to go. He's starting high school. He's looking forward to it.
Carew Papritz has been my guest on this WIHS Journal today, and the discussion will continue tomorrow about what parents should be thinking about as they prepare to send their children to school, whether at home or actually in the classroom. For further information, call us at 860-346-1049. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of this station. I'm Paul Kretschmer on the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from WIHS, Middletown.